Welcome, alumni and friends. My name is Alan Hawkins. I've been on the faculty here now for 27 years. Does anybody outdate me here? Does anybody go farther back in the school than that? All right, so I know I'm getting old. Were you? Okay. I'm excited. This is an inaugural event for us. About a decade ago, I started grumbling and complaining within the department that we have this incredible untapped resource, and we never do anything with it. And that resource was our alumni. It took a while, by the way, to find you all. You're scattered hither and yon in the databases of the university. And our department, which we now call the School of Family Life, has been called about 25 different things over the years. But we identified all of those, pulled them all together. And at our latest count, we are at 18,000 alumni of the School of Family Life. That's an incredible number who have gone through the school and have a passion for helping and strengthening the home and families. But again, my complaint was we give them a certificate and clap when they go across the stage, and then we wave bye. And that felt sad to me. So I did a little complaining, and my department chair said, you know, you're right. We need to do a better job of staying connected to our alumni and the incredible resource that they are. Resource in their communities, helping strengthen families in their communities, homes and families. As well as a resource for mentoring current students, and in some instances also a resource to give back to the university and provide scholarships for our students who are going through. Just a lot of ways that we know that our alumni can be a blessing out there, and we wanted to connect to them better. We also felt like, one of the university's leading documents says that part of what BYU is to do is to set you on a course for lifelong learning. And yet we just waved bye-bye to you when you graduate. And we started wondering what could we do more to do about that. Well, about 6 or 7 years ago then, we started, our first effort was to reach out to you via an alumni magazine. And I'm almost afraid to ask this question, but how many of you are getting a magazine from the School of Family Life? You know, that looks maybe something like this. Oh, well, good. That's better than what I was thinking. By the way, if you haven't, would you talk to me afterwards? I want to get an address from you, and we'll check you in the alumni database and find you and pull you into the School of Family Life. Now, we have been sending out some of those copies electronically, and those can often get spammed, and so that might be part of the reason. But I convinced my department chair to go to hard copies now. We are going to be mailing out hard copies of our alumni magazine once a year to all of our alumni, and we're going to really make it good. We hope that helps to keep us connected. We also hope that it keeps you connected to some of the good findings and research in the field and things that are going on in the School of Family Life. So we feel good about that, but then we started thinking, this is a new era. Staying connected to people is a lot easier now. And we asked Courtney Parker if she would help put together a Facebook group for our alumni. What's our membership now? 800 and 900. So that's not 18,000 yet, but we hope to be growing that over time as well and staying connected in that way. But tonight is our inaugural alumni address. And we're very excited about that. We're hoping to offer these on a regular occasion, not just here, although this will be kind of a home base for us, but we hope to branch out too and offer these alumni lectures in other areas where we have high concentrations of our graduates. But we're excited to do this. Many of our alumni are doing wonderful things out there. And we want you to know about that. And we can all stand to learn more, lifelong learning. So, Courtney, why don't you come introduce our speaker, and we'll get going tonight.
Okay. So as Dr. Hawkins mentioned, I'm Courtney Parker, and I graduated just 6 years ago, 2010, in the School of Family Life. And I manage the Facebook group. If you found out about this event just by email and don't know about that group, it's called BYU SFL Alumni Connect. So look it up, join it. We've been loving the participation that we've had in the last month, and we hope that we can keep up that momentum and keep up the connection that we've had with each other, and to drive it down even further with these kinds of events. And then with that, we have another event coming up in April. You've got a flyer for that. Laura Brotherson, she's one of our fellow alumni, and she's now a marriage and family therapist. She's a certified sex therapist. You might not have ever heard of that. I hadn't before then. But she has written the book that you probably have heard of, And They Were Not Ashamed. She's also come out with a book just in this past year called Knowing Her Intimately, 12 Keys for Creating a Sextraordinary Marriage. And so she's going to be presenting on that subject, and we're going to have an alumni date night for you married couples to come and enjoy that. So please put that on your calendars. So tonight we have Denise Barney, and she's going to be presenting to us. And just to introduce her, she's a mother of 6 children, ages 30 to 17, grandmother of 6, and she's received her degree from BYU in the Family Sciences in 2014, so quite recently. She's been teaching Dr. Glenn Latham's material, The Power of Positive Parenting, for 15 years. Dr. Latham's material has been life-changing for her and her family, and she's enjoyed sharing it with others and uplifting others, and so we hope that you enjoy that tonight. Thanks for coming.
It is good to be here. What a great idea to gather as alumni. Thank you, both of you, for providing this opportunity for all of us. I love when I teach to see people come who just, obviously if you've come to a class, you want to make a change or you want to learn something different. And that to me is so refreshing. So often we just continue to do the things that we do, hoping, right, for a different result. I think that's the definition of an insanity, right? It's that you continue to do the same thing over and over, hoping for a different outcome. So I love when we come together and just try to learn from each other. So let me just briefly tell you a little bit about Dr. Latham. I can see maybe a couple of you have his books. I hate even like showing you this book because it needs, not only does it need a new cover because I've completely used it, but it needs a new cover because it's so outdated. So if you were to see this book on a shelf at the library or at a bookstore, you would probably say, oh, no. But let me just tell you that I would say, oh, yes, this is fantastic information. As Courtney said, life-changing for our family, for me personally. But Dr. Latham was a professor up at Utah State. He's LDS. I've learned and studied a lot about parenting, about relationships, and I was trying to find a better way. When I was young, all I ever wanted to be was a mom. And then one day that happened, and I started having children. And it was not what I thought it was going to be. I loved my children, adored them, but I did not love being a mom at all. It was hard. I was in the trenches and had really no ability. And so I started to learn and study and take classes and eventually went back and got my degree. And as I did that, I learned from a lot of different people and a lot of different things. And when I found Dr. Latham's material, to me, it's how the Savior would parent. And so for me, it was exactly what I needed to find and what I needed to know. And then we were able to make some really great changes in our family and our children. And things have been great. And love more than anything in the world now being a mom. It's the best thing ever. And all it took was learning skills. You know, a lot of times we go and we hear all the primary answers, right? Just search those scriptures, which of course that's what we need to do, absolutely. And say your prayers. When you're terribly impatient one day, just get on your knees and pray, and tomorrow you'll be better, right? But I wasn't being better at all. Every day was exactly the same. So finally I learned skills. And that's what it took, just to learn a different way. So I'm glad you're here. We're going to just dive in. This needs to be, though, a discussion and not a lecture. And I wander, so I'll try to talk. I hope everyone can hear me back here. But we're gonna have a lot of material to get through in a short amount of time, but I still want to maybe like teach the skill and then have a scenario that we can talk through. So be thinking of experiences that you have with your children that maybe we can use to work through the skill so you can see how the skill works. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so let's just dive in. All of the things we're going to learn tonight are human behavior principles. They work not just on your children, they work on your spouses, they work on primary classes, they work at work with your coworkers, extended family members that you might have struggles with. So all of these are human behavior principles. I taught this class one time and I had a cute wife come up afterwards and said to me, she said, I used all of your skills. And the first skill we're going to learn is to have praise and positive interactions with your children and the people you have relationships with. And she said, so I had to drag my husband with me, she said, and so he got out his phone when I first started to teach, and he was on his phone for a while. And then she said, so as soon as he put his phone away, I would start rubbing his back. And then the second he got his phone back up, I would stop. She says, I did that the whole class. So at the end, he was paying attention. So again, these skills work on everyone, okay, not just our children. But that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is how to have great relationships with your children. So our first skill we're going to learn tonight is that of positive. The idea that we need to have positive, pleasant experiences with our children, which sounds like, well, of course, that's what we need to do. But I promise you, and I want you to go home and take some data, okay, kind of a homework assignment. I just ended up putting like a sticky note on a cupboard door, but I want you to go a couple of days and take some data. And what I mean by that is I want you to kind of feel out how many positives versus how many negatives, okay? So moms, let's talk through, or dads, let's talk through maybe a little scenario at the end of a school day, okay? Say you've got a toddler, a couple kids in elementary school, and maybe one in middle school, okay? So mom, you had to probably wake up your toddler, get him in the car, drive to do carpool, right? So you pick up maybe your elementary school kids, you get them back home, and then your middle schooler comes off the bus, right? And then all craziness, right? Everything kind of is wild, and backpacks are all over the floor, and you've got 3 things you got to get kids to, and you have no idea what you're going to fix for dinner, right? And your toddler by now is so cranky because you had to wake him up. And so you can imagine that get that backpack put away, right? Okay, who's supposed to be practicing right now? Okay, get in the car, right? We're just commando. We're just yelling out commands all the time, right? So just in those 2 hours alone, the negative versus the positive. So even if you want to just take data for 2 hours, take it at that time of day. Or dads, maybe take it when you come home from work. Okay, maybe that's your crazy time, right? Mom's trying to do dinner and the kids are climbing the walls and mom says, it's your turn, you take them, right? So those are kind of the crazy moments that maybe would give you a better indication of what's happening in your home. So just take a little data, little tally marks, how many negatives versus how many positives. I think what you will find, as we've studied this, is that there's 5 to 6 times more negative in our home than there is positive, okay? And you can kind of understand that. When our kids are behaving well, what do we normally do, right? Happy day, you just keep doing this, and I'm gonna be over here doing this, right? So that's what we normally do, is we ignore the good, right? Then the second they misbehave, where are we? right on them, right? So what's happening is we're giving attention to the negative behaviors instead of the positive behaviors, okay? So, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Just know that for every negative that you have with a child, 8 positives to make that emotional connection okay. So every time we have to have a negative, and I'm not saying that we don't ever have negatives, right? That happens. So we need to be making some deposits into their bank account, right? We need to make sure that there's enough positive going on that when we do have to have a negative experience with our child, that emotionally our relationship is going to be okay, that their emotions are going to be okay. Does that make sense? Okay. These positive interactions can be anything from a hug, a high five. We have 6 kids, 2 girls on the end and 4 boys in the middle. And all of our boys from the time they're 2 till seriously 16 or 17 had buzz cuts. And so every time I would walk by one of my boys, just a rub on the head. I love it. And while we're talking about boys, I'm really one day going to do a study on this. But if you grew up in a home of boys, tell me if this is true. I do not think boys can pass each other at any time, any place without a little, am I right? Those of you who have brothers or grew up in homes with or have boys. So with our 4 boys, that was always happening. I've come to determine that that is their way of saying I love you. So just kind of keep that. That's just a little added bonus information. Keep that in the back of your mind, okay? So we're going to be having these positives. Notes are great. And actually, notes for me are the gift that keeps on giving. When my boys got ready to go on their missions, we sent them to the MTC, and then I would come home and clean out their room, get it ready for whatever child was moving in next. I would find in their nightstand, all 4 of my boys, I found all the notes that I had ever written them. They had kept all these notes. Dr. Latham shared a story about a boy who was in the foster care program. And at 18, when he aged out, his foster mother went in to do the same thing, kind of clean up the room. And she found, he was on the bottom bunk, and she found a note that he had received when he was 12 years old from a teacher at school that he had taken to each foster care home that had said good things about him. So I love notes. Notes can continue to, you can continue to feel good about that. A little message on a mirror in the bathroom. Words, they need to be brief, no more than 12 words. You don't want to take much time, 5 to 7 seconds. Because again, we don't want to disturb the good behavior, right? We just want to move through that, praise them for the good behavior, and then you move on, okay? Now, as you take this data and kind of get a feel, what's truly going to happen is you're going to know that you need to kind of change your habits, okay? So as we're changing our habits and trying to get this in our home, this positivity, and moving forward, the goal for the first little while, and if any of you have more than 2 children, grab your arms right here because you're going to just not like this, 20 positives per hour per child. When I had 5 kids when I learned this, and I was like, excuse me, I need to sit down. This is too much. So, oh, and what have I done? Again, this is just to get things moving in the right direction, okay? It's to change our habit. If we were to continue at that pace, we would create crazy kids who were completely enabled and would need to be praised every minute of their life, right? And that's not what we want to do. But we need to get that moving in our house, in our homes, okay? Yes?
Repeat it one more time.
20 positives per hour per child.
Like a phrase?
A pat, a wink. See how easy it is? It's not anything big.
Does that include the bigger child in the home?
Yes. Your husbands? Yes. Wouldn't that be fantastic? What if you all went home and did that? Well, you'd be like, who are you, right? I don't know who I brought home with me. And your kids are going to feel that way too. You're going to start implementing these skills and they're going to go, what is going on? But it's going to be great. So 20 per hour per child or per spouse. And then again, that's going to level out, okay? We're going to want to be intermittent with our praise eventually, okay? But get it going in the right direction, okay? Any questions on that? Okay, one last thing about praise and positive interactions. Praise can be a perfect teaching tool because we're going to get into some skills where I'm going to tell you that it's okay to ignore your children's behavior and you're going to have a problem with that for a minute. But because you're going to say, I need to teach them. That's my fear, is if I let those behaviors go, how am I going to teach? Praise is the perfect teaching tool. So as you give praise, be descriptive. I really love how you took out the garbage. That shows me that you're responsible. So you're describing the behavior, and then you're adding a value to it, okay? So praise is the perfect way to teach, okay? In a good environment, they feel good about things. Okay, so a little bit about praise. So that's our first principle. We're going to go in order of these skills and principles. The most important. This is the very most important skill that you're going to learn tonight. And we're going to get to some things to do when your kids misbehave, and you're going to think, oh, no, that's the most important. But I promise you, as you use these first skills, you are not going to need the end skills that we learn very often, okay? So please remember that. Praise, positivity. The only thing we get to take with us, right, are relationships. And so as we do this, we're going to create wonderful relationships with our children and our spouse. And our home is going to be a place where they want to be, okay? That's the goal here with all of these skills that we're learning tonight. Okay, so that's skill number one, principle number one. The second principle is that behavior is strengthened by parental attention. So, either positive or negative. If we are giving attention to negative behavior, we are strengthening it. If we're giving attention to positive behavior, same thing occurs. We are strengthening that. So, as you go about your day, again, take a look. Am I just responding to my kids when they're misbehaving? And if so, you are strengthening those behaviors, which goes, it's a little counterintuitive, isn't it? Like we talked about at the beginning, we usually just let them be if they're playing nicely together. But if we want to strengthen that behavior, we're going to praise that. We're going to learn in a minute a skill called purposefully ignoring, which is the greatest skill ever invented. But we're not going to give attention to negative behavior, okay? So whatever we give attention to is the behavior that's going to continue. Dr. Latham shares a story in his book about a family who came in for some counseling. They had a 4-year-old little boy and a 2-year-old little boy. And these parents were sure that they were raising a little monster boy, their little 4-year-old. So Dr. Latham sat him down, had him describe what was going on in the home, and what was happening is every time the mother would leave the room, the 4-year-old would turn on the 2-year-old and attack or hit or bite or pinch or whatever. And she'd seen it a few times, so she kind of knew what was going on. And then the 2-year-old, of course, scream and cry and you know, a whole big scenario. So Dr. Latham said, well, tell me what you do when this happens. He asked the mother, and the mother said, well, I get right down in that little 4-year-old's face and wag my finger, and why, oh, why do you keep doing this? How many times do I have to tell you, stop, you can't do this? And he said, okay, well, what do you do with the 2-year-old? Well, I love and cuddle and make sure he's okay. He's been injured. He's, you know, the death, I don't know, every time. So gets his blankie and rocks and whatever. So can you see what's been created in this home? The 4-year-old is getting a ton of attention. It's negative attention, but it's still his mother's attention, right? And the 2-year-old is getting a ton of attention as well, because the mother is not in there every single time, so she doesn't know exactly what's happening every time. So who knows what this 2-year-old is doing, right? Maybe the little brother is just a little soft push and wail. So Dr. Latham taught him some skills. We're going to learn how to stop and redirect behavior tonight, and sent them on their way with this skill. Went home, made an amazing difference for the first week. Things were so different, and that behavior went, which we're going to talk about this, but clear down, less frequent. And Dr. Latham saw the grandfather actually at the store, and the grandfather was like, I don't know what you told him, but it's a miracle. Things are so much better. Well, 3 weeks later, they're back. Not only is it terrible, but it's worse. So they talk through it again and come to realize the mother, which again, we're going to talk about this treatment curve, had fallen back into her old habits and was giving a ton of attention to the negative behavior again. So children want our attention. So whatever behavior we're giving attention to is the behavior that's going to be strengthened. Everybody understand that skill? Okay. A friend of mine teaches these classes as well, and she had a 35-year-old man in her class one time, came up to her after class and shared this story. And this really shows how much our children want our attention. 35-year-old man shared that his father, when he was young, would use a belt on him. And anytime he misbehaved, he'd get a whipping with that belt. And then the dad would gather him next to him, sit him by his side with his arm around him, and they would have a discussion about what had happened. And this man told my friend that he misbehaved on purpose, even though he knew he was going to get whipped, because he wanted to have a chance to sit by his dad. That's powerful. So our children will learn quickly what it takes to get our attention, okay? So we're going to change what's going on in our home. We're going to start giving attention to positive behaviors, which then leads us into our next skill. And like I said, this is my favorite skill. We are going to learn tonight that we can ignore junk behavior, age-typical behavior. So every 4-year-old does this behavior, every 17-year-old does this behavior. And as we learn what behaviors are age-typical, then you'll know even more that you can ignore this. And let me give you an example of that. Our first daughter, when she turned 16 or 17, all of a sudden wanted nothing to do with any of us. I was so offended by this. We had had such a great relationship, and all of a sudden, we didn't matter. She didn't want to spend time with us. All she wanted to do was be with her friends. Okay, if someone had told me that was totally age typical, that all teenagers at that age are very self-absorbed, and it wasn't because she hated us, right? It was just that she was being regular. That was normal. But nobody told me that, so we struggled for a little bit, and kind of our relationship took a hit. And then I talked with other moms and learned, oh, your daughter's doing that too. Hallelujah. My daughter doesn't hate me. So once I understood that, the rest of our kids at that age, be on your way. Go be with those friends. Hallelujah. You enjoy yourself, right? And I didn't take it personally. So once you understand what's age typical, that kids will either outgrow that behavior, or as we choose to ignore that behavior and pay attention to good behavior, that negative behavior or inappropriate behavior will die out, okay? Now, there are 3 things that we can't ignore, 3 types of behaviors. If a child is hurting someone physically or emotionally, if they are hurting themselves physically or emotionally, or if they're damaging property. I promise, though, maybe another homework assignment, if you go home and make a list of the things that bother you about your children, like that are driving you crazy, that 95% of the things on that list are going to be things you can ignore. So, how are you feeling about this skill? I always get parents who are like, well, especially, I usually teach this in 2 classes. So we kind of teach these skills, and then I send them home for a week to practice, and then we come back and learn the second half. And always at the beginning of the second half class, they're like, well, I don't know. I'm just so afraid of ignoring that. What if I don't teach them? What if they just think they can keep doing that, right? But honestly, as you choose to ignore those negative behaviors, the ones that fit in that 95% category, that's huge, right? That's a lot of behaviors, right? Those are going to die away because you're going to be praising the good, which will then increase the likelihood that that will continue, the good behaviors. Yes?
Can you give us an idea where we can learn about the age appropriate behavior?
Great question. Google it. I'm not kidding. I had a lady last night tell me, I went home after you told us that, and I just Googled typical behaviors of a 13-year-old girl. She's like, holy cow, everything that bothered me about my daughter was on that list. So do that. Talk to other parents. Talk to your sisters and your brothers and their families. Just get an idea of what's going on with other kids, right? And as you do and learn that, okay, how many of you have 8-year-olds? Okay. Is there so much crying going on in your house with an 8-year-old? At my house, so much crying. Life was so stressful at 8. But did I know that with my first couple? No, okay? Life is tough at 8. 3, not a great year, is it? Okay, so just know the things, the ages. And those of you who have a lot of kids, this is the best, isn't it? So you have this kid going into this stage, right? And then, oh, hallelujah, he's coming out. Oh, dang, I have another one. He's right on the cusp. We would turn to each other, my husband and I, and go, take a deep breath. We have like 5 seconds. This one would come in. But just know that most of the behaviors are to be ignored. They will die out. And the behaviors that you're giving attention to, those good behaviors, will be strengthened, okay? Now, it's a skill that takes some practice, okay? We can't, first of all, we're not giving you permission to ignore your children. We're giving you permission to ignore their bad behaviors, okay? So we need to do this purposefully. Is that even a word? I like it. I don't know if it is, but I like it. So we do it with a purpose, okay? We don't let any facial expressions or body language, which is really tricky, and it takes some practice, okay? Because as they're doing that, and you really want to just wring their necks, right? You're going to just be like, oh, I got to go over here and make dinner. Or so you're walking away from it. Let's talk about maybe tattling. That's always a good one that we have a lot of. Anybody a teacher? So I just can't even imagine like having like 30 kids in your classroom. That would be like a little child every, 13 seconds up to you saying, Mrs. Barney, so-and-so did, right? Ton of tattling.
They have high school kids.
They don't do that as much. I'm sure they do. That's a whole nother class, isn't it? So just imagine tattling, right? And if you don't have tattlers, happy for you, but continuous so-and-so did something. And a lot of times you'll probably have 1 or 2 kids in your family who are good tattlers, right? They never were, they're always the victim, right? So how do we ignore tattling, right, without ignoring the child, okay? So we want to, as they come up to us, whatever level they're on, if they're this tall or if they're this tall, then we're down here, right, with them. Just a nice brush down the shoulder. I'm sure that made you sad as you turn them to go that way. And you turn to go this way, okay? So you've acknowledged the child, eye contact, you're sincere. I'm sorry you feel that way. And off they go, and off you go, okay? Now, how about tantrums? A little more difficult to ignore, right? And they take longer, just FYI, a little longer. And they're usually in public, which makes them even more difficult, but same principle, okay? How many of you have seen America's Funniest Videos? Of the family, like they had a house where you could see through the living room, then take a step, and then there was a galley kitchen. So the dad is videotaping the little tantruming 2-year-old, and then he steps into the kitchen area so the little boy can't see him. The little boy stops. Funny thing, right? Dad's not paying attention anymore. So he gets up, he comes past on the opposite side. Oh, there's Dad again. Flops to the ground. Tantrum, tantrum. The dad steps back, same thing happens. For like 3 minutes, this went on and on with the little boy. So he was doing it to get his dad's attention, right? So tantrums. Again, if you can move a child away from you while he tantrums, great. If not, you move away, great. If not, how many of you have had a child attach themselves to your leg? So we just drag along, we're fine. We're happy, we're not gonna hurt anyone, right? We want to, but we're not. And you ignore this. It might be tricky. You might have to go lock yourself in the bathroom. I don't know, whatever you're gonna do. But as you learn this skill and as your child learns that you're gonna use this skill, this tantrum is going to be short-lived and will be gone, okay? But no, tantrums take a little longer, but it's the same way with any other behavior. So some parents ask me, well, what if my child, if I walk away, what if they follow me? Okay, you can do that. You can also ask a child to go to his room until he's done, and then he's welcome to come back. Some children will do that, some will not. So maybe you need to go to your room until he's done. But if you can't get away from the scenario, then you just ignore it. And you keep your smile. This, at first, it might be painted on. It might be really painful. But we're going to not let our children know that they've gotten to us, okay? So we are going to ignore with a purpose, okay? It's a skill. It will take you some time. Be on the same page as spouses. For a while, my sweet husband, so like I said, we had these 4 boys who are fantastic human beings now. I mean, they were then too, but they are now. A lot of muttering under their breath, stomping down the stairs. Please tell me you've all been told you're the worst mother in the world. Wear that with honor. That is so amazing. Love that. Okay, so I had these 4 boys, and all teenagers. I mean, like, we really had a whole bundle of teenagers at once. So a lot of that under their breath. And their sweet dad, who just wanted to teach them to be respectful to their mother, right? He had some issues with that. So we had to sit down and talk about that for a minute. And I just kind of shared with him, I'm good. I'm not offended. I feel like, as a matter of fact, I'm doing my job well if they're saying those things to me because I'm giving them some boundaries, some rules. Anyway, so we came to the conclusion that if I'm okay with it, he's going to be okay with it. And then we just ignored it. It's so age typical, right? What teenage 12, 10, 11, whatever year old boy, if you tell him no, is not going to be mad, right? Of course he's going to be mad. He wants to go do whatever he wanted to do. And he's still learning how to take care of his emotions, how to be a good human, right? So we're going to just ignore that behavior. And then it will go away. It will die down. Trust me, my 20-year-olds do not mutter under their breath anymore. They do not tell me I'm a terrible mother, to my face at least. Maybe somewhere else, I don't know. But they will grow out of that. So we just chose to ignore that behavior. But we had to talk about that. And this would be the one where dads would be like, but we need to teach them. Okay, so we're going to teach. But we're going to teach at a different time. We're going to have a fabulous family night on being respectful. Or we're going to have a wonderful discussion at dinner time about respect. And you're going to share an experience maybe of how you were respectful to your mom. So we're going to teach in a different time. Does that make sense? Okay, so questions. And if you don't have any, then you're not thinking.
So the walking away of teenagers, how do you feel about getting in your car and driving away from the house?
As long as the child is safe somewhere, right? I mean, you can't leave the child. I don't know, can you leave the child? Do you have like a teenage child that can watch the little one? So think about that. I mean, you just need to make sure that you're leaving the child in a safe environment, right? So if you need to go hide in the closet, not that we ever do that, right, moms? I had a friend literally who would hide in the back of her Suburban. She needed just a moment. She would climb in the back seat in the garage, shut all the doors. Back in a moment, she would say. So you just need to make sure your child is safe if you need to leave, right? That's why I say if you need to go into your bedroom for a minute, feel free. Get your pillow, scream a little, come back out. I'm good, right? Okay. So but be willing, like at grocery stores, in public, if you have a child who's tantruming, we just pick that child up. We go put them in their car seat maybe, and we put them in the car and we stand outside the car where they can't see us until they're done tantruming. Or we go home if they're old enough to understand what that is, right? So we don't have to put up with the tantrum in public. If we do, if we can't leave the venue, like we know lots of moms at grocery stores, right, who are just pushing as fast as they can with a screaming child, right, because they have to be there and have to get what they need to do. And you know what, if you ever see that mom, will you just give her a little hug and a little squeeze on the shoulder and say, you go girl, okay? Because we've all been there, right? And we're all so afraid of what people are thinking of us, right? But we're gonna get rid of that because we don't really care what people think. You're trying to just be a great mom. So if you have to do that at the grocery store, you're just gonna do it. And you're gonna just, and again, you don't have to give that child attention, right? They're gonna be right in your face, right here at the cart, but you're like, what else do I need, okay? You're just going your business, right? Okay, can you do that?
Is there a scenario where, I don't know, I just read the Raise and Emotionally Intelligent Child by John Gottman, and he talks about it's important to acknowledge something. I realize that tantrums are a little different than
Right.
actual,
So like the tattling, right? That scenario. We always want to acknowledge the child, right? As they come up or whatever it is they're doing. As we learn the next couple of skills too, there will be acknowledgement in those skills. But the acknowledgement is brief. Right. I'm sorry you feel this way, but I need you to do ... Or that's probably hard, but still in our family, this is what we do. So we are acknowledging the child briefly, not a ton of time, attention. Lots of people talk and ask about timeout as an option. Just really quickly, timeout works if it's done completely appropriately. And so let's talk about that. Timeout means timeout from any reinforcement, right? So for most of us don't really have a padded room that we can lock from the outside, right? Because literally, where do we put our kids for timeout? In the corner, on the stair, in their room. please send me to my room. That would be like the best reinforcing place in the world. My bed, my pillow, my book. Children have their toys, their blankies, right? Huge amount of reinforcement in a bedroom. It's great though, because you can like put them out there. But you know, before I learned these skills, I sat outside one of my kids' bedroom doors for months of my life. I probably like for 4 months of my life spent my time holding that door shut. No one had told me you could turn the lock around. Who knew that? Okay, that's another story. Sorry. Did I say that out loud? Okay, sorry. Some of these things we might want to take off the video. Okay, so. But can you imagine all the reinforcement that child got? Hello, mom's right outside the door. I'm going to just scream and kick and throw, and it's fabulous. That was like 1,000 hours of attention I gave to that boy. And funny, I thought, how come this isn't changing? Nope, just kept on going. So just need to be careful with timeout. It needs to be in a place where there's no reinforcement. So really, you almost need a separate room, like that has nothing for them to do. But go and think about it. And then the other problem is, how many really of your children, just by the raise of hand, are going to just walk right to that timeout and stay there? No, none of them, right? They're going to, you got some then?
Something different in that we come on the piano bench, and so there is a reinforcement, but then they go, and so that was the hard time because we have foster kids, and they wouldn't go to the room, especially for me. They wouldn't go sit on a chair, but they would sit on the piano bench.
So if they'll go and sit.
And they would hammer.
Okay, play. So just, you walk out of the room, make sure no more children are in the room, right? Dr. Latham? Exactly. Dr. Latham shares a story about a 6th grade boy who would misbehave in class. His teacher would send him directly to the principal's office, literally every day. And in the principal's office, there are like the nicest secretary ladies. They are so sweet to him. They would love him, and they would fix up this little table in front of them. He would sit at that table, and then all the kids would walk by in the hall right there by the glass, and he'd high-five them all through the glass. Well, who wouldn't want to go down there? Hello. I'm not staying in the 6th grade room and have to learn and study and whatever. I'm going to the principal's office. So we just need to make sure if you're using timeout, you do it correctly. Yes? No, me neither.
When I was reading about positive learning and I read about timeouts, I was like, yes, because I was like, I felt like, yeah, we're not doing timeout.
No, exactly. My worst parenting moment, let me put this down so you can really picture this, was I was taking my one son to timeout because he had hit his brother or whatever down in the family room. And he was about 7, and it was before I knew these skills. So I'm taking him by the hand. Okay, really, I'm dragging him. Let's be honest here. I'm dragging him by the hand, and he's grabbing onto everything. The banister, the door frame, the doorknob, right? And we had like a multi-level house, so I get him up the one flight of stairs. I'm prying his hands off, and I'm taking him around to the next long flight of stairs. And by halfway up the next flight of stairs, I am so mad. Okay, again, this is being videotaped. But I'm so mad, honestly, I'm swatting his hiney the whole way up the stairs, and these are my words. We do not hit in this house. Oh my goodness, what in the world was I thinking? So, yeah, we gave up on timeouts too. That really just didn't work out for us as well. So, timeouts can work, but there's so many better skills.
Well, so my experience with that actually is my daughter will do it, but it works out. She won't do it.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that, and it's going to be a little painful to hear, but you're going to be okay because we're all in the same boat. Why do dads get good behavior, and moms are like, question, but we're going to get to that, okay?
So if a child is used to getting reinforced for a negative behavior,
yes.
and you ignore,
yes.
should we expect that they would exacerbate that behavior for a short time before it kind of dies off?
Look at you teaching this class. Initial short-lived resistance. Exactly. We're going to talk about this at the end. But absolutely, you're going to get that. You're going to get it there. And then you're going to get it right down here again. Okay? Because they're going to think, oh, what are we doing here? We want to get through that. And then they're going to go, okay, maybe it's okay. And then they're thinking, no, I don't really like this. Or we've forgotten our skills. right? Okay, yeah.
So maybe we'll talk about this later, but I'm thinking, what if it's not something they're doing, it's what they're not doing?
Okay, so you want getting your kids to, Yep, we are going to talk about it, okay? And remind me if we don't kind of get there, which we will get there, so we'll answer that. Okay, we got to kind of fly through some of this. So we understand how to ignore, right? Okay, we're going to move on to the next, which is going to address right here. The idea of behavior is largely a product of its immediate environment. The best way I can describe this is, how many of you have had a primary teacher or a school teacher come up to you and say, your little Johnny is the best child ever? And you're like, I think you got the wrong mom. My little Johnny is not any best kid ever, anywhere. So what's happening is the environment, so the primary class, the school class, whatever, the expectations are very clear. The follow-through is very clear. And so good behavior is happening for Johnny, right? So in our homes, really what's happening is our kids' behaviors have been learned behaviors. I don't want to say, I don't want to make you feel bad, but really kind of the bottom line is that we've kind of created some of these behaviors. Now, not all behaviors, because probably some of you have that child, right? The one we love so much, probably more than any of the other children, we love them. But, so not all behaviors are created. Some come with them, hallelujah. But for the most part, we have created these behaviors because of past experiences, right? So, like you were talking about, if behaviors have been reinforced, right, in the past, negative behaviors, that's what's continuing in our home. So when you talk about why does my husband get immediate results, kind of two things could be happening there. One is that our kids learn, Mom, you're going to count to 10. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9.5, 9 3/4, right? And then at 9 3/4, they're like, oh, she's serious, and I'm going to run and do whatever it is, right? Dads usually are like, this is what I want you to do, and you just better go do it right now, right? And hopefully it's done in a non-coercive way, but sometimes, both of us, doesn't have to be dads, sometimes we use coercion. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And coercion is to force someone. So coercive behavior would be yelling, spanking, screaming, belittling, sarcasm, lots of those kind of things. And sometimes that's used, and that gets immediate results. It doesn't get long-term results, but it will get immediate results because it's done, children respond in fear, okay? So those are the kind of things that sometimes happen. And so one parent may get an immediate result and one parent not. So if we've kind of created these scenarios and these behaviors in our children, then what we're going to do as we learn these new skills is uncreate or create new behaviors for our children. What do they say for a habit? I kind of want to say 45 days. Is it 90 days? I don't know. I'm hoping it's just, oh, so much better. That's so much better. I was thinking 90, and that's so long. Okay, we're going with 21. We don't know if it's right, but 21 sounds great. But we're going to take some time to develop these skills, right? So we're going to have to be really patient with ourselves. But we're going to work towards a proactive home instead of a reactive home. With reactive homes, that's where you have coercion, okay? And that's damaging to relationships. Bottom line, damaging to relationships. When coercion is in a home, if you're a coercive parent, and we didn't have time to talk about parenting styles, so maybe you'll want to go home and kind of Google that, and probably all of you have graduated from this lovely program, so you know all about these styles, right? But with coercive parenting, it usually starts in your home about 14 months old, when your kids turn about 14 months old, and then by 14 years old, if coercive parenting is happening, your children will flee. They will not want to be by you. They will not stay by you. They will not stay in your home. They will be at every friend's house that they've ever known at all times, okay? Think about relationships that you have that would be coercive. Maybe relationships that someone is critical or negative, or do we want to be with those people? Do we want to be around them? No, we don't, even as adults, right? That is not what we choose to be around. It's the exact same thing with kids. Let me give you the cutest example. It's not really cute, but it's very, well, it is cute. Okay. So in church, there was this darling family that came and visited our ward. And a dad, a mom, 6-year-old little girl, probably 3-year-old little boy, and a new baby. So after the sacrament, the mom took the baby out, and the little girl was sitting on the end of the bench, and they were sitting right in front of us, so I kind of watched this whole thing play out. And so the dad turned to the little 3-year-old and took off his wedding ring and handed it to the 3-year-old, which, again, that was funny. Not sure why he did that, but okay, he did that. So he hands the ring to his little 3-year-old son, and the little boy kind of took it like this, and then he immediately hit the pew in front of him. Well, just FYI, if you want a loud noise, you go ahead and take that. I don't even know why or how, but it made the loudest noise. So he hit it a couple of times before the dad had a chance to react. But this father did what any of us would have done, right? Just the natural gut reaction, natural man, right? He grabbed that little 3-year-old boy because he was embarrassed. Like everybody was looking at him, right? So he grabbed that little boy kind of harshly, grabbed him, plopped him right down next to him, grabbed the ring from him, put it back on his finger, and then the dad was done and he started paying attention again. I watched that little 3-year-old boy play out the exact definition of coercion and what will happen if you are coercive. So dad starts paying attention. This little boy looked up at his daddy, scooted away, looked again, scooted, and as soon as he was arm lengths away so dad couldn't grab him again, he jumped up and ran as fast as he could to sit by his little sister, or his big sister. And that, as you can imagine when you have teenagers, exactly what's going to happen. And then what happens is that we don't have any kind of ability then to continue teaching or sharing or being an example or any kind of influence on our children because they don't want to have anything to do with us. Okay? So absolutely we have to get coercion out of our homes. Question, yes.
So when you're talking about coercion, sounds like you're drawing a distinction between consequence after action rather than a threat.
Threats can be coercive as well, but and we're going to talk about consequences in a few minutes and how to use those appropriately. But coercion can be threats ahead of time. They can be, does that make sense? They can be the tone of your voice, your body language. Any other questions on how to describe that? Can you get a picture? Like for me, did I say this at the beginning, that you parent how you were parented unless you choose to do it differently? And bless my sweet mother, who is no longer with us, and she did the best that she could, but she nagged, and I nagged. I was the queen of the nagging. If there had been like a sash, I would have worn it. That's what I knew. That's how I was. Nagging is coercion. Like it just changes the feel in your home, doesn't it? And as parents, that's our responsibility. We need to be in charge of the feel of our home, okay? So we need to make sure that is our responsibility, to be proactive instead of reactive. Now, I had a sweet man, I taught a class last night, who stayed after, and he said to me, sorry, I sometimes get emotional when I think about all of us trying to do better, right? To just try to be a better parent. So this sweet man talked to me afterwards, and he said, everything that comes out of my mouth is coercive. He said, I don't think about it. It's just what happens. It's my immediate response. It's my immediate reaction. And his sweet wife said, it's because of how you were parented. And so he paused for a minute and thought about that and said, that's exactly why. So his question was, how do I change that? How do I change that? So let me share with you my own personal experience, and hopefully it's not too personal, but I tried all of those things that we talked about. I studied, I learned, I went to classes. Let's not be too emotional here. And I tried to do better and to be better, and I was better than at the beginning, right? But I still wasn't where I wanted to be, and I still wasn't loving being a mother. If I have had, this is the most personal experience I've ever had with the atonement of Jesus Christ, was with my parenting. His enabling power made me better. He filled in the gaps. He changed my nature. So I shared with that sweet Father last night the opportunity that he has to ask our Heavenly Father and our Savior to help him change and to be a better parent. And I promised him that that would happen, and I promise all of you that if the Savior will help me, he will help you as well. Sorry, and I didn't bring a tissue, so okay. Yes.
I have a thought too. So when I would call my dad about parenting tips, he's like, Sharice, you have to develop a sense of humor.
Oh.
And it's so hard because you want to do sarcasm, and what you need is a sense of humor. And my husband's gotten even better with the sense of humor, the quick wit. Kids.
It's true. And I love that distinction. Oh, thank you. You are so sweet. Look, Kleenexes galore. Okay, we hopefully won't need all of these Kleenexes. But I love that distinction. I love the difference between a sense of humor, because literally if you don't have a sense of humor, you're not going to make it through this process. I have a couple of family members who don't laugh with their spouse. They do not have fun in their home. And my kids have seen that. They've seen the difference. And we talk about that. And we're just so happy. You are sweet. Look, so many Kleenexes now. Oh. I love it. Anyone needs some, just let me know. Okay, so I love the difference, though. Please, just look at it in a different light, right? If you are struggling and things are heavy and hard, learn these skills and develop a sense of humor. One quick story, and then we're going to move on, that is the perfect example of this. In our house, when my kids were growing up, I had to warn my children that it was Fast Sunday the next day. So Saturday night, had to tell everybody a little reminder, because you know they had to prepare themselves emotionally so they'd be able to fast. So one of my boys had been out, who knows where, Saturday night, so I don't think I told him the night before. So I'm in the kitchen Sunday morning, and I hear him get up, and he's down in the basement, and we have the storage room in the basement where all our food storage was. So I hear him get up, I hear him go into the storage room, and I know he's getting a box of cereal. And I've kind of forgotten that it's Fast Sunday, so I'm not remembering this. I'm not connecting the dots yet. So I'm so happy for him, actually, because really, when you have 6 kids, you never get a full bowl of cereal. You get dregs almost every single time. So I'm so happy for him. He's going to have a full bowl of cereal, the kind he loves. So he brings that box up, and he's getting ready to open it, and he gets the cardboard ready or open, and he's right with the plastic. You can picture when I remember it's Fast Sunday. So he is in the motion of opening the plastic when I say, "Oh, Ryan, it's Fast Sunday, honey. I'm so sorry." Oh my gosh. Woo! Like this box of cereal sprayed like the whole kitchen. On the floor, in the sink, on the cupboards. It was crazy. And he just looks at me, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Now, I could have gotten mad, right? Because, come on, you're 16. That's a little ridiculous, right? But junk behavior. So I just turned my body to the sink window, and I am laughing so hard. I am chuckling. And luckily, he's a good kid, and I just am like, you just probably need to clean that up. And he did, which if he hadn't, we would have addressed that in a different way, but he did. But there was so much junk, like stomping and, can't believe this is so stupid, and he's stomping and slamming doors, and then he stomps all the way downstairs. And I hear him get in the shower, again, some slamming of doors, and it was fabulous. And then 30 minutes later, he comes back upstairs in his white shirt and tie, ready to go to church and bless the sacrament. And we're good, the family's good, the feel in the home is fine. So if you just need to snicker a little, turn your back, choose to laugh instead of cry, right? This is what we kind of have to have a mantra sometimes. So develop a sense of humor. I love that. Okay, let's move on. I have no idea what time it is. Okay, here we go. Because I know you came for these skills. What do we do when our kids misbehave, right? That's really why you're here, I know. But again, remember, we're going in order. So praise, praise, praise. Understand that whatever attention is given, or whatever behavior is given attention is what's going to increase. Ignore inappropriate behavior and realize that we create the environment. And if we have an environment that is disciplined, our children will be disciplined, okay? So those are the first 3 skills, or 4 skills, and they go in order of importance, okay? So keep those in mind. Now, let's talk about what to do when our kids misbehave. Again, the first level is to ignore their inconsequential behavior, and we've talked about that enough, so we'll move past that one. Strategy 2 is called selectively reinforce other appropriate behavior. That's kind of a lot of words, so let's talk about what that means. It's a 2-part skill. So selectively reinforce other appropriate behavior. So the perfect example would be in a classroom setting. Say you have a primary class. You go into this primary class, and usually you have 2 darling little well-behaved children, right, who are just sitting there appropriately waiting for you to come in and teach them. And then you probably have 2 of like crazies, right? Who you're just like, oh, I hope they're sick today. No, you don't really ever say that. Okay, but you think it. Okay, so you have a couple of those, right? And then maybe you have a couple who are just regular. Some days they're great, some days they struggle, whatever. So you're going to walk into your classroom, and you are going to praise the appropriate behavior that you see in your classroom. So the 2 that are sitting quietly, maybe you'll even sit down by one of them. And you're going to start a conversation, and I'm so glad you're here, and I love when you come in and sit quietly. Thank you so much. Or you're going to wink at them, or a thumbs up, okay? And the other 2 that are climbing out the window, you're going to just ignore them for now, okay? And then what's going to happen with that, you're going to get one of those others to start behaving because they want to be praised, right? And eventually, as you ignore the climbers out the window and you start praising those others, you're going to get all 6 sitting quietly at some point, okay? So you're going to praise, selectively praise, let's say it right, selectively reinforce other appropriate behavior. In our house, the best time for this was when our kids got home from school. I usually had 1, maybe 2, who would sit down by themselves and start their homework at the kitchen table without me having to say anything. And if I sat with them, I would get 1 or 2 more who would come and sit by us to start their homework because they wanted to be by us and they wanted to have my attention. So we're going to selectively praise appropriate behavior. Now that's the first part of it. The second part is, let's say you asked one of your children, you asked Jake to take out the garbage. And Jake's like 11, and he's really, really busy watching a video or playing on his Game Boy or whatever they're called now. And he doesn't want to take out the garbage. So he's going to give you a ton of junk behavior. He's going to say stuff like, it's not my turn, you always ask me, why do you have to interrupt me? Can't I just sit and play for a minute? All of this junk behavior, right? And what are we going to do with the junk behavior? No, we're going to ignore it. That's right. So what we're going to say to him is, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I still need you to take out the garbage. If we stay calm and we're not emotionally involved in this, if we don't become yelling and screaming and red-faced and whatever, but we stay calm, almost always, within 3 tries, if you keep that broken record approach, but why do you ask me? It's not my turn. Well, it is your turn. I'm sorry, but I need you to do it. Okay, so brief, repeat it again. By the 3rd try, they'll go take out the garbage. Now, are they going to just be happy and smiley and go take out the garbage and walk down the hallway all nice? No, of course not. They're going to stomp, a little more muttering under our breath, right? Slam the garage door. So all of that is junk behavior. So the skill is when we selectively reinforce other appropriate behavior, we're going to reinforce or praise anything good that happened there, which would be what? Take out the garbage, right? So when he comes back in, you're going to praise him for taking out the garbage. Thank you so much. I sure appreciate that. Leave it at that. Move forward, okay? If we react to every single thing like that that our children do, which maybe we do, right? Maybe that's our habit. Maybe that's what we're doing. Just picture the damage every single time to the relationships, right? And by the end of one day or a week or whatever, you're just like ready to pull your hair out, okay? But when we learn the skill that we don't have to even deal with any of that junk behavior, because remember, they're going to grow out of it, or if we don't give it attention, the behavior will die, right? That's going to go away, okay? And it is freeing. The idea of being able to ignore inconsequential behavior is the most freeing skill, or at least it was for me. When I finally got it right, it just freed me to be happy, to be positive, to be just in great relationships with my kids. because all of that negativity went away. Okay, any questions about that? So selectively reinforce other appropriate behaviors, 2-part skill, okay? So again, first level of defense is ignore the behavior. Second one is we're going to praise other people's good behavior or any part of the behavior that is good, right? Okay, so then let's get to the third. Yes?
So like gritting your teeth and ignoring.
But we're going to grit. If we're gritting, no one can see the grit.
But it seems like that leads to maybe just like a
blow up.
Blow up, yeah.
Right.
Is that okay?
Right. No. So, but we're going to be patient with ourselves, right? And this is what I will promise you. It will take you some time to develop this skill. And in the meantime, when we have the blow-ups, because they will come, we're going to be okay. We're going to know that we're still trying. Again, we're going to be asking for our Savior's help in this, right? It's not going to happen overnight. But once it's a solid skill, it seriously, like all the other skills we're going to learn, which are a couple more with consequences, you don't even have to use them. Literally in our home, we have 2. We have a missionary who just came home last week. So great. So we have 2 at home now. But I can't even tell you the last time we had to use consequences because of the skills, right? And because we've praised and ignored, those behaviors die away. So you may have to grit with your smile, right? But as you get better at the skill and as you talk about it, it's kind of tricky. You're all going to go home, I promise. I went to like 7 classes before I felt like I knew what I was doing here. But you're going to go home and you're going to go, can I say that? I don't even know what I'm doing. Is this okay? And so you're going to kind of panic for a few minutes, but it will be okay. You just keep reading your notes. It's well worth getting the book. It's on Amazon. You can get it used. It's well worth it. This book is kind of like a manual. And then I always say this is like the short read. He has this one, What's a Parent to Do? He has Parenting with Love, and he has Christ-like Parenting. And all the same skills, but with scriptures attached in the little books. And in this manual, it is fabulous. It's like in the index, what do I do if my child's whining? Oh, go to page 39. What if I need to potty train? Exactly. What if my child tells lies? What do I do? What about how do I get my child to do homework? What if I have a child that's gone astray and is doing drugs? Like all of this is in this manual. So it's fabulous. And he'll walk you through what to even say. It's great. Good stuff. Okay. So that's our first skill is to ignore inconsequential behaviors. Second skill is to selectively reinforce other appropriate behaviors, which moves us to our third skill, which is stop, redirect, and then reinforce. So the 3 types of behaviors that we talked about that you can't ignore, this is when you will use this skill, okay? So if you have children who are hurting each other or maybe belittling another child or damaging your home, slamming doors hard enough that it's going to damage it. This is when we will use this skill. And this is how the skill works. We are, again, face-to-face. Now, I always have to kind of give the little asterisk here. If you have a child who has an anger management issue, you need to make sure that you are in a place where you are safe. So you may not want to be like right here. You may want to be right here, okay? But for the most part, if we have a good relationship with our children, we can be here close enough where we can have some physical touch, okay? And again, if they're small, we're down on their level. And what we say is, Sarah, that behavior is not acceptable in our home. Okay, so we're stopping the behavior. And again, do you think your children are going to go, oh, you're right, Mommy, I'm so sorry? They are going to start giving you junk, right? They're going to give you a ton of junk. It's never their fault. Isn't that a funny thing? Never their fault. I don't know. But that's what they're going to tell you. It's not my fault. So-and-so did something first or whatever. And again, this broken record approach, that may be how it happened, but in our home, it's not acceptable to hit. Or, I'm sorry you feel that way, but still in our home, it's not acceptable to hit. So that's the stopping part, okay? And then you're going to redirect, like we were talking about when you are ignoring that behavior. So once you've stopped the behavior, then you're going to send them on their way. Now what I need you to do is go and do ... something that's appropriate. Go play in your room with your toys. Why don't you go outside and ride your bike? Why don't you go downstairs and listen to music? Why don't you come in the kitchen and help me? So you're going to redirect them into something appropriate. This is a great teaching skill as well, because we've stopped the bad behavior and now we're teaching them what is appropriate, right? And then the last portion is to reinforce. So within a few minutes, you're going to go down to the basement if they're playing with their blocks, or outside if they're riding their bike, and praise them for something. So you're going to give them your attention for behaving appropriately, okay? So stop, redirect, reinforce. Does that make sense? Yes.
If they are still misbehaving,
or if they won't go do,
there should be consequences in place. Do you have to have those lined out specifically beforehand?
Let's talk about that in 1/2 of a minute, okay? So this principle works for the rare occurrences of behaviors, right? So you walk in and there's a tuffle, or somebody's left their backpack on the floor for the 100th time, right? So you're going to stop that behavior. No, we don't leave our backpack there. I need you to put it away, and then I need you to go out and do ... Okay, so those, and backpacks, that's really not even, you just decide. If that's something that you can't stand and you need to address it, then this is the skill you would use, okay? For rare behaviors. Now, if it's a reoccurring behavior, right? Same thing that we can't ignore, but it's been reoccurring. This is where, if we need to, we'll use a consequence. But so this is how the skill works with reoccurring behaviors. You're going to sit your child down, and you're going to sit him down not when it just happened. Because, you know, children are so loving and kind after they've been disciplined, right? Or you've had to get after them, right? They're going to listen to every word you say. No. My daughter had to write a report for her lovely family science class when she was here. And it was literally, it was a critique of her family, of how we raised her. Horrid. Like, why? Why do you have them do this? And why did I read it? That's even a better question, right? But she was so cute in her paper. She talked about my sweet husband, who is very wise. He really is very, he has the gift of wisdom, honestly. I have to say that, that's not sarcastic. But the beautiful part of it is he wants to share that with you. And with every child, he wanted to share that wisdom. So Krista would say that she would sit down with Dad to have the conversation whenever something had happened. And she said, literally in the paper, she said, I would give him like 30 seconds to say what he wanted to say, and then I would tune out. Because if you can say it in a really good way once, then 10 times has to be better, right? Because you just change it a little and then say it again this way. And anyway, so that's what was happening. So he would, you know, he had to go on and on about it. And anyway, so she just said I would give him 30 seconds, okay? So children are not ready for this conversation if something has just happened, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna sit them down at a different time when things are fine, nobody's been in an uproar, okay? And we're gonna be very descriptive of the problem. So throw me out a problem that you'd need to address. What kind of things happen in your home that you can't ignore?
They never hang the towels up. There was wet towels.
Moldy, damaging, that stinky room is horrid. Okay, perfect, let's talk through this one. So you're gonna sit your child down, which this is a great one because this is fine, I love this one. So you're gonna sit your child down and you're gonna start a conversation that's good. You know what, you're awesome, I love you so much, whatever. Be sincere, okay? We don't wanna throw out platitudes that they're like, okay, what are you doing? Why am I here? But we're gonna be sincere. And then you're gonna be descriptive. You're gonna explain the problem. You know what I've noticed the last few months is every time I go into this bathroom, there is like a gross towel on the floor. Okay, maybe you wouldn't call it that. You'd be like, there's this fluffy towel on the floor. But it's stinky, it's so stinky. So you describe that, right? And when it sits there, it kind of gets mildewy, and that's probably not pleasant to use the next day. So that's kind of what we're seeing happening. So, and this is where you engage the child. Let's be part of the solution. Let's let the child be part of the solution. So what do you think can happen, right? What can we do to take care of this problem? So they're gonna help you come up with a solution, okay? Now, for this problem, this conversation is gonna be piece of cake, pretty easy. You're not gonna get a ton of junk behavior because, okay, I can fold up a towel, right? I mean, they won't do it, but they can. So they're gonna talk to you about it, right? So they're gonna, okay, yeah, Mom, I will, that's perfect, great. So that's how we're gonna play it out. Then at the end of the conversation, and this is a key point, you're going to say, okay, so honey, what do I expect you to do? So you've had the conversation, you've come up with a plan, you've stated the expectation, and then you're going to ask them to repeat it back to you. What do I expect you to do? Because if we don't have that happen, if you say something like, now do you understand what I need you to do? They're going to go, yeah, and off they go, right? But if you ask, what do I expect you to do? They have to repeat back to you what it is that you've both decided on. So then when it comes time to say, hey dude, you're still leaving the towel on the floor, and we talked about this, and now I'm going to have to put a consequence on it, they're going to go, you didn't say that. That's not what you said, right? But if they've stated it back, you know they understand, okay? So you have them state it back. Now what do I expect of you, okay? Or what do I expect you to do? And then you send them off to be good towel hangers. Okay, are they going to do it? Probably not, especially the first day, right? But you're not going to nag. You're going to give it a couple times, because maybe if one of them does it and you praise that one, then the other one's going to go, oh yeah, I got to do that too. So they're going to do it. I'm kind of a 3 strikes mom. I kind of give my kids 3 times to try and remember on their own. And then if they don't remember, we're going to have this exact same conversation, and then we will attach a consequence, okay, which we're going to learn how to do that. Consequences are negative. So we need to make sure we're doing all these other skills before we attach a consequence to behavior, okay? And we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, if we had chosen a different scenario that maybe wasn't quite as easy, right? Like maybe you have a child who is late for curfew, or maybe you have a child who has a particularly hard relationship with another child, and so there's bickering and fighting and whatever, and you're going to have to address that. You're going to get a ton of junk behavior. There's a whole page on communicating your expectations, I think it's at the end. Make sure you read over that. Make sure when you're having these conversations that you don't get drawn into this fight or this battle with the junk behavior. Again, it's that broken record approach. That may be how you feel, but still, if your sister is bothering you, you cannot hit her. We do not hit in our home. That is not acceptable behavior.
Does this work with like 2-year-olds?
Yes, it does. And mostly the earlier skills work with 2-year-olds. Usually I say yes to 2. I would almost do stop and redirect with 2-year-olds. That's kind of, and 3 and 4. 4 is about the time that they can understand some of the greater concepts here that we're talking about. But those other skills work so well that you wouldn't have to really do this, okay? Yes? No. Uh-huh.
I get to the point where I ask, okay, do you understand? So what am I asking you? And then you get the blank stare, so would you go back?
Remember how mommy talked about this is what we need to do? So you talk about it again, and then now you'll get older kids. So the 4-year-old still you wonder if he's understanding it, right? Yeah. But your older kids, you may still get some kids who don't want to be compliant, right? Who are not going to give you an answer no matter what, because they're mad. They're so mad at you. They're not going to answer that question, which is fine. And you end the conversation with, well, I hope that at some point you're going to want to come back and finish this conversation with me. And until then, I'm going to have that little phone of yours. Or you're going to deny yourself the privilege of ... until you're ready to come back. Right. Right, the older ones especially. Yep. Okay, I just said some words. I want you to write these words down. You will deny yourself the privilege. My kids hated those words. It's so great. They'd be like, stop saying that. And it's the best words. Either you will deny yourself the privilege, or you will choose not to enjoy the privilege. And the point here is, as we use consequences, which we're going to talk about next, they are choosing, right? We do not have to be the bad guy, okay? They are choosing whether they're going to be obedient and enjoy good consequences, or they're going to choose to be disobedient and have some negative consequences. You are not the big bad guy, okay? Consequences are going to be set out beforehand. So let's kind of move into that. Do you understand the other skill, the stop, redirect, reinforce, okay? And the 2 types of behaviors that we use it with. Okay, so let's move on to consequences. So consequences are awesome. Again, they're a negative, so we don't use them all the time, but when we use them and we use them correctly, they are wonderful because they will change behaviors, okay? Two kinds of consequences, natural and social. Natural consequences are wonderful teachers, but for the most part, they are too adverse to allow to happen. So a natural consequence, how would we teach our children the best way to not play near the stairs? Well, we'd let them fall down the stairs, right? I mean, that would be a great teacher. That would teach them, but we can't let that happen. Too hurtful, right? So there's a lot of natural consequences that we can't allow to have happen, so we have to use social consequences, okay? So what we want to do, first thing you're going to want to do is to kind of take a look at your kids, watch them for a few days. You want to figure out what their currency is, okay? What is it that they cannot live without, okay? And that may sound harsh, but you may have to get creative at some point in your life. And you may have to use some of these really difficult kind of consequences, because you may even have a child that won't change no matter what, right? Like nothing matters, fine, take it away, I don't care, right? So you have to get creative. Dr. Latham talks about how with one family, they had a teenage girl, don't even know what she was doing, but they ended up taking off her bedroom door. Now that was creative, right? I mean, so just, you have to get creative, okay? Hair gel. Another family took away hair gel from a daughter. So get creative if you have to. So consequences are great teachers because the children are choosing, which puts the responsibility on themselves, okay? Not on you. So, but the whole idea as we use consequences is we cannot, again, allow our children to know if we've been affected by the situation, right? So we're going to stay in control. We're going to stay calm, unemotional. When I say unemotional, I'm not saying you're detaching yourself emotionally from your children, but you're not getting emotionally caught up in the moment. My sweet daughter, who's 17 now, when she was about 10, 9 maybe, she came in one day, so she's the caboose, so everybody else was in middle school or high school, so they had already gone to school, and she was my little elementary school girl still, so we had a few minutes in the morning by ourselves. And the night before was family night, and we had had donuts for family night treat. And there were still donuts in the kitchen. So she said, Mommy, I want a donut for breakfast. And being the good mother that I am, I said, of course not. We're not having donuts for breakfast. Okay, I'm going to have one later, but you are not having a donut for breakfast. But that was like, you would have thought I had this, I don't even know. It was like this eruption of, oh my goodness. She was so sad and so mad. Just, whoa! And which was really not typical for her, but it happened. So I just said to her calmly, you're welcome to head on back down to your bedroom. And when you're in control, feel free to come back. We'd love to, we can keep talking about it, or just, things will be better. So she went, which a lot of kids wouldn't have, but she did. And she literally was back in my room in 30 seconds. Stopped crying. And these are the words that she said. I don't know if I have them written in my notes here. She said to me, Mom, I am so glad that you are a mom who doesn't get upset when we get upset. So as we stay calm, which that I think for me was what Heavenly Father changed for me, is He allowed me to be more calm. He allowed me to become more patient, where these things didn't affect me. And then she shared a story about her friend across the street whose mom always gets mad when her little friend got mad, and that the whole feel in their house was yucky, I think is what she said. And so just think about that. If we are reacting, right? So we need to stay calm. And as we are able to stay calm when we use consequences, then they are wonderful teachers, and they will change behaviors. Okay, so let's go through quickly, and then we will be done. So consequences need to be understood up front. How many of you have thrown out a consequence in the heat of the moment, right? Like we're mad and we're just spewing whatever comes to our brain. And what have we done? Like we have said this crazy consequence, right? Like I remember grounding a child for 3 months. What? It's like I just grounded myself for 3 months. What was I thinking, right? So we don't want to do it in the middle of emotion, okay? Feel free to say to your child, you know what, I'm going to get back to you on this one, okay? And you're going to go talk to hubby or wife and be on the same page and come up with something that's going to be appropriate. But for the most part, we want to have clearly stated expectations, which we can do in family night, we can do at the dinner table, we can just have group conversations about what's expected in our home. We can have personal discussions, like we talked about in the skill previous, with specific children about certain things, but we need to have consequences or expectations stated. And then when we do have to add a consequence, we sit them down, have that same conversation, and we put in a consequence. So for instance, when our kids turn 16, they have the delightful opportunity to drive a family car. So the expectation at our home is that you will have a job and you will have the deductible in the bank. So whatever the insurance deductible is, they have that amount of money in the bank. So we sit them down when they turn 16 and we just talk about what a great age it is, and we're so happy for you and we're so glad that you have your driver's license and you get to use this car, and you also get to go out now more on weekends, and let's talk about your curfew. So we have this great discussion, and then we talk about curfew. And so in our home, when they're 16, their curfew is at 11 o'clock, which, in case you're wondering, if you're ever in Draper, Utah, I am the only mother who makes their children come home at 11 o'clock. Pretty sure that's true. Every one of my kids have told me that. Pretty sure that's true. So you're going to have this conversation, which has probably been a really great conversation up until this point, right? And then you're going to say, 11 o'clock. Isn't that great? You get to go out and be with your friends, and you can use the family car, and this is what we expect. And they'll give you some junk behavior about that 11 o'clock curfew. Oh my gosh, I'll be the only one who has to leave. Are you kidding me? Da, da, da. Yeah, that might be hard, but still in our home, 11 o'clock is the curfew. So then we ask them, so what do we expect? What are the ground rules? What have we talked about, right? So, okay, I need to have the deductible in the bank. Yeah, I got that. And okay, I have to be back at 11 o'clock. So they've said it, and then we send them out to be wonderful 16-year-olds. It's fabulous, so great. Okay, well, mostly it was great. But so that happens. And we had a couple kids who would, you know, when we say 11 o'clock at our house, we mean 11 o'clock, unless there's a text or a little phone call to tell me where you are. So we had one child, our second, who decided to push the envelope a few times. So like I said, I'm a 3-strike kind of mom. You guys decide what works for you. First time he was late, a few minutes, just a couple, 7 or 8. Didn't say a word. Glad you're home, Ryan. So happy that you're here. Okay, went to bed. I don't even know if it was the next week. I don't remember exactly, but happened 2 more times. Okay, 2 more times. And finally we had to sit down and have a conversation and put in a consequence. And the consequence was that you will lose the privilege of the car for a week. We never had to enforce it because he never was late again. But that's how that conversation would go, okay? So make sure that you state it up front. Okay, 2 more things and then we're done. They need to be reasonable and enforceable. Again, you need to be on the same page. Moms, if dad puts a consequence in force, you need to follow through on it. Same thing, dads, if mom puts one in force, you need to follow through on it, okay? It's best if you talk about it together, but that sometimes doesn't happen, okay? So make sure that they're enforceable and reasonable. Again, like I said, check out what their currency is, okay? So you can use that. And then the last thing is that you need to think of consequences as a teaching moment. Discipline, the word discipline means to teach. So we're not going to be thinking of in terms of punishment, okay? We're not punishing our children. We want to teach them a better way to behave, okay? And consequences can do that. So make sure as you're thinking about that, we're not using punitive or adverse consequences that are hurtful or painful. The loss of privileges will change behaviors, okay? So just figure out what their currency is. And then the very last thing is make sure that you're precise, accurate, and consistent, okay? Your children will battle you against each other. They'll ask dad, mom said no, ask dad, or dad said yes, whatever, right? So you got to be on the same page and make sure what you say you're going to follow through on, okay? Last story, and then we're done. So we had a child who, when he was 13 years old, we had to move. Or we did move. I don't know that we had to move, but we did move. And as we prayed about that, Heavenly Father let me know that this son would struggle. He left a group of friends who were great kids. And we just moved like 1 stake away, but because he was only 13, he couldn't drive yet, he couldn't like get back to stay with that set of friends very often. And we moved into a ward, great people, but literally not one soul that any of us wanted him to be with, me included, him included. So he literally had no friends for quite a while. So his behavior came out, his bad behavior because of that move came out in his academic life. So he chose, thankfully it was his 8th grade year, which doesn't count toward college applications, right? So I had some time on my hands to try and fix the situation. But so he just would not turn in his assignments. If he turned them in, he would get A's because he's bright. But he just was not turning in assignments. So here's this poor boy, no friends, horrible life right now. And I had to come up with something to help him change his behaviors. We went through all the other stages, right, and tried all of that. So the consequence we had to choose was the only thing he loved in his life at that point, and that was basketball. And he was playing on a comp team. This is probably the hardest parenting thing I had to do. I had to take that away, or I had to tell him that he would choose not to enjoy that, right? So I had to phrase it the correct way. But that's the consequence that was in place. He could choose. All he had to do every week was turn in his assignments. Expectation was not straight A's, it was just do your best. And your best is no missing assignments. So I could check, good old Skyward, so I could check, see what was going on. And every week he had missing assignments, every single week. He played in 2 preseason games, and then he missed the whole season. But that's what we said would happen. We followed through. I would cry in my pillow at night, sob, and then I would come out and be fine. And at first he would be mad, and I would ignore his junk behavior and all the things. This is so stupid. And then he would try, well, I turned it in, and she just didn't put it in the computer. And I'm sorry, but still, that's what we've talked about. Anyway, by the end of it, he and I were great. Our relationship was fine. He was fine. He knew that that's what we had said. We followed through. And I never once had another problem with him through the rest of his schooling with grades. He understood, and we left it in place the whole season. And if I had needed to move it faster, I probably would have had to try and find something else because it took the whole season, but we had time. So we left that consequence in place, and it changed his behavior. Okay, so that's how we use consequences in the nutshell of shortness. Sorry, we're plowing through a lot of material. Questions, quickly, yes?
Just another example maybe of how we phrase that you will deny that privilege.
Okay, and I wrote this write this like on your kitchen cabinet, like inside. So you'd be like talking to your children and you open up the cabinet, you will deny yourself the privilege, or on your hand, you will deny yourself the privilege. Literally I did that because I needed to use the words right. So as you state the expectation, so like we'll do the curfew. So Ryan, if you choose to be home at 11 o'clock, then you will choose to earn the privilege of driving the car. If you're not home, then you will deny yourself the privilege of the car. A phone, a favorite toy, a reading time with mommy, whatever their currency is, video time, you will choose to enjoy it, or you will deny yourself the privilege or choose not to enjoy it. Does that help? Okay, so back to this and then we're done. So this is the treatment curve, okay? We've all learned the treatment tonight. So many skills, and I'm so sorry we crammed so much into your brains. So that's right here, okay? So this is our inappropriate behavior. Let me move over here. And for the most part, whatever behaviors we're trying to change are up here. So we have a high number of inappropriate behaviors up here, okay? And then we've learned skills tonight. So we're gonna put that treatment into effect. Most of you are gonna get this initial short-lived resistance, right? You're gonna go home and tomorrow you're gonna try so hard. You're gonna be fabulous. You're gonna be fabulous tomorrow and the next day. And then the next day you're going to be horrible again, but that's okay because we're going to be patient. But you're going to get this kind of initial short-lived resistance because really your children are going to go, who are you? And what have you done with my mother and my father, right? But we're going to stay true to what we've learned. We're going to try hard to put these skills into practice. And then it's going to get better. You're going to see some really good things happening. The behaviors are going to lessen. And we're going to get down here, okay? This can take... We did a class the 1st of January, Lisa Childs, you've seen her. Have you guys seen her in our Facebook page? So she came to my class the 1st of January. So that's what, 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks? And she is like this has already happened. She's seen great results just in 6 weeks of time, 6-week period of time. So just know this is going to be good, but then you're going to come to a point again where their behaviors are going to get bad again, okay? It's called the end of the honeymoon period. And it happens for 2 different reasons. One, your kids are going to push through and try to, they kind of like this bad behavior stuff. They're getting a ton of attention, even though it's negative, right? And they're not really understanding why you've changed, right? So they're going to try it again here, or, which is most likely what's going to happen, we'll fall back into our bad habits. So in our home, though, this whole process took about 6 months. I noticed at about 5 months, I couldn't really pinpoint it, but the feel in our home was different again. And it took me a couple of weeks to understand, oh, that's where we are, we're right here. And the reasoning was me. I had stopped praising my kids. So I went back to praising. It's really important that you realize it and recognize it right here, because if not, their behavior is going to go whoo again, and even can go past the initial baseline, okay? It can get way worse. So you need to catch it right here, and then truly the treatment takes effect. And it's because you will feel like you have the skills, okay? And then you're going to have stability with some bumps, right? Of course. Nothing is ever perfect, but...
So are the children developing new bad behaviors, or does the same bad behavior come up in a
Either one, right? They may try something new, or they may get into a new age, right? So another age typical behavior will appear. But these skills, in general, negative behaviors will die out because we're praising the good, ignoring the bad. Yes?
Have you ever seen what it's like when one parent does it, the other one's not on board? And how
Yes.
bring other parents
Yes.
by doing what you need
Yes.
to be doing?
Please, if you have to go, do. No problem. I know, exactly. You're all awesome. Yes, I have. It's more difficult, but not, you can do it. That's what I'm trying to say. So you can do it. The best way, obviously, it's hard to go home and teach your spouse, right? So that's why I always say have him read the notes, teach it to him, sometime, or her. I don't know, are there any dads here by themselves? But be patient and modeling it. It took my husband a couple of years to jump on board. It really did. And now completely great. So just a lot of modeling. Okay? Yes?
What's the difference between junk behavior to ignore and disrespect or behavior that's inappropriate?
Okay. So again, those 3 things, right? So disrespect, it really always comes up. Every class I teach, disrespect is a hard one. And really, it's usually harder for dads, which I give you a cheer for that, because you know you're looking out for your wife and you want your kids to be respectful. But really, disrespect, I don't know, how many of you have, any of you have married kids at all? I don't have one married kid who's disrespectful. And I sure had a lot of teenage boys who did a lot to me, right? So to me, disrespect is completely junk behavior for me, but that may not be for you, okay? So you have to decide, is it worth what you're going to need to do to fix it, maybe damage the relationship a little bit, or can you learn to ignore it? Because it will go away. Because again, if you give it attention, you're strengthening it, right? So inappropriate behavior, again, remember, damage themselves, or hurt themselves emotionally or physically, hurt someone else emotionally or physically, or damage property. Those 3 things we don't ignore, okay? So respect could fall into that, right? It could fall into that. If you always have a child who's belittling their mother, then, right, then you need to address it, absolutely. And you would start with those skills that we learned about sitting them down, this is what we've noticed, right? So yeah, just decide together, because it can be. Okay. You're awesome. I think we have treats somewhere, refreshments somewhere.
Just before you go, let's thank
Oh.
Grace for a wonderful job.
You guys are great.
Alumni Services has a gift for
Oh,
her for
fun.
the
Thank
wonderful
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Hopefully you have some great skills to take home. I know I do. We have BYU brownies and ice cream for you guys to eat.
The best.
Yeah, of course. But before we do, and I forgot that we can do this at BYU, you know, like have a prayer
Prayer.
before, so
Oh,
we
yeah,
can do that.
it's true.
But can we end off better? Is there anyone who would like to give a prayer?
And as you're thinking about that, let me say one last thing. Please don't go home overwhelmed. Choose one skill or one child that you want to work on, okay? And just work on that one. And again, be patient with yourself because we talked about a lot of stuff, okay? And also, I teach wherever. So if you have a group that you want me to come and teach, feel free to get a hold of me, okay? All right.
All right, thanks.